Upskilling. The pressure to build new skills is everywhere. But how are you supposed to do that if you're working all day? Hi there, I'm Sabrina from Answer in Progress, where we make videos taking people on the journey from question to answer. In this video, we speak with a time management expert and finally make the time to learn a new skill. Hi there, I'm Sabrina, I'm from Answer in Progress, and I love learning. I love it so much that I actually built a whole business around it. A media production company that walks people through the process of asking a big question and then answering it. It's great, except sometimes I find myself so busy running this business, answering emails, taking meetings, whatever, that I don't actually have much time to learn new things. And I'm not alone. According to the 2019 American Time Use Survey, every day we spend about 6.5 hours working, 10 hours on keeping ourselves alive, and 3.5 hours on personal errands. That leaves, on average, about 4 hours every day for everything else. Hanging out with friends, catching up on TV, and learning. How are we supposed to work with that? To figure it out, I spoke with my favorite time management expert, Thomas Frank.
Hi, I'm Thomas Frank. I have been on the internet for a number of years, and for the most part, what I create is content around personal development and organization and productivity.
Going into this conversation, I thought that it took 10,000 hours to learn a new skill. That's a lifetime of training. Luckily, I was wrong.
That's a question that I don't think has a definitive answer. A lot of people love to point to the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours rule. Some people will point to, say, Josh Kaufman's 20 hours rule, but it kind of is much more variable than that. It's very marketable to throw a number on it, number of hours of practice, but it really comes down to the skill, who you are, your own learning ability, which is somewhat innate, and then it's the factors and variables that go into your practice. All of these things kind of come into this formula we could create, I guess, for how long it takes to learn a skill.
Even though learning new things can take different times for different skills and different people, we tend to share one thing in common.
So I don't know what the mathematical term for a curve that looks like this, but essentially you have the noob gains, which you make in the beginning. So you're growing by leaps and bounds. And then as you get more into that expert area, you start making smaller and smaller improvements over time.
So we make the most gains within the first few hours of learning a new skill before hitting a speed bump and our progress slows. The cool thing is, that isn't a bad thing. Instead, it can be viewed as a milestone, where you know enough that you can recognize your skill level is where it needs to be, is worth more effort to improve, or that your energy is better directed elsewhere. But even though we don't need that much time, how can we find it with a fully loaded schedule?
So a couple of things that have helped me, because I was building my blog when I was a full-time student, and even when I had a full-time internship, 40 hours a week, I was still building my blog. If you can squeeze all of your actual work into a dedicated block, that gives you more time and more uninterrupted time to work on your side thing.
Well, there are many ways to organize, but the most important thing to know is that
multitasking is the destroyer of results. Your brain can't multitask, or rather it can't multifocus. You can actually multitask. I can breathe and I can talk to you right now. I might even, if I practice enough, be able to juggle and talk to you right now. But that's because one of the things I'm doing has become an unconscious behavior. You're kind of like a single processor or single core CPU. A single core on your central processing unit cannot do two things at once. So it creates the illusion that two things are happening at once when you multitask on your computer by hopping back and forth between tasks incredibly quickly. Unfortunately, your brain can't do it very quickly, so you sort of incur what's called this cognitive switching penalty. There's like this attentional residue of the previous task that you're left sort of mulling over as you're trying to sink into the new task. It's going to take you maybe 10-15 minutes to get rid of all that attentional residue from whatever you switch to and get back into the flow of things.
So, try to organize your schedule to minimize the number of times you switch tasks and avoid overlaps and multitasking. You can also try and build the skill during work hours. Find projects that exist in the intersection of your current abilities and the one you want to build. Or reach out to coworkers who have that skill. You could make a friend in the process. Finally, you can reassign your leisure time, spending a little less on social media and a little more on learning. With that knowledge in mind, I finally made the time to learn a skill I've always wanted. Digital marketing. I have worked in digital media for over 6 years now. I can make stuff like this. But at the start of the week, I had no idea how to market it. I was under the impression that a good product can speak for itself, but then I spent the rest of the week learning just how wrong I was. Now, if learning new skills like that is of interest to you, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because this channel is all about empowering us to level up our careers and abilities. Let's talk about day one. My week started off with 3 hours of kickoff meetings and stand-ups for all of the projects that I'm involved in. Honestly, I was really tempted to start upskilling with my mic muted and my camera off, but then I remembered, no multitasking. So instead, I used Primer, Google's free bite-sized mobile learning app. I took a digital marketing mini course. The lessons are only about 5 minutes long, so it's really easy to do in between meetings or during meals. By the end of day one, I had spent 30 minutes skill building. So for the next few days, I continued to take Primer courses in between meetings. However, I also learned that I could cram a little bit more study time by eating my lunch a little faster and staying at my desk for a little bit after work. During any longer stretches of time, I also took free virtual workshops using Grow with Google on Air. By the middle of the week, I'd already spent 6 hours skill building. On Friday, I actually built the skill into my work hours by assisting Taha. He's in charge of our company's marketing and growth strategy using browse optimization. That entire process made me really appreciate how important marketing is to the business we own together. Like, in a world where there are dozens of people doing what you do as well as you do it, digital marketing is one of the only ways to stand out. So by the end of the work week, I had spent 8 hours skill building. Finally, it was time for the weekend. Now, I usually start my weekends by just laying in bed and letting the morning roll by. Except for this weekend. I decided to trade some of that leisure time for learning. I kind of forced myself to get through hours of skill building lessons and applications so that by the end of the week, I had about 20 hours under my belt. And I am exhausted. In terms of knowledge and ability, I am definitely in a better place than I was at the start of the week. I have a bunch of ideas on how to market my business, and I now have the skills to do it, kind of. But with the way I'm feeling right now, I'm kind of worried that I'm too burnt out to start.
I guess when it comes to the speed at which we learn skills, it comes down to what do we need the skills for and how soon do we need them. You can take a certain amount of that overwork. You're going to feel exhausted, but you can take it. But what's the justification for taking that? You have to ask yourself, is that actually important to me? Am I trying to learn a skill because I saw somebody on social media do it and now I'm jealous of them or I want to be like them? Or does it really matter to me? Is it going to make my life better? Is it going to make my average day better?
So, when it comes to making the time to learn a new skill, it really goes back to first principles. Why are you learning it? Are you in a rush and have a deadline that requires a short-term sprint? Or can you afford to work a little slower and potentially avoid burnout? That is up for you to decide, but don't burn out if you don't have to. However, it might be useful nonetheless to know the following tips. 1. Try and build upskilling into your pre-existing work. 2. Sacrifice a reasonable amount of leisure time, the kind that you won't miss if it got a little bit more productive. And finally, 3. Avoid multitasking. Don't do it. If you focus on learning, you will learn faster. Learning while working is tough, and it can feel slow or exhausting, or honestly, both. But just remember why you are doing it, and let that guide the pace on your journey to a new skill. Good luck.
Sometimes your dream job requires learning a new skill, but how do you do that without going back to school? Hi there, I'm Melissa from Answer in Progress, where we make videos taking people along the journey from question to answer. In this video, we speak to a skill building expert and find alternative ways to learn new skills without formal education. Okay, so full disclosure, I studied creative industries in university, and now I run a media production company, a creative industry. But even though I'm apparently one of those rare cases of people applying their degree in their work, I often find myself needing to learn new skills that they never mentioned in school, and I'm not alone. According to this white paper by Lucian, only 39% of students feel very prepared to join the workforce. And that's kind of startling, because that's less than half. But I think that's because school isn't supposed to teach you everything that you're ever going to need to know for work or life. And I know that I can't deal with the mental or financial burden of university again. So I've heard about upskilling, but I'm not exactly sure where to start. How can we gain new skills without going back to school? So to help answer that question, I spoke with Bailey Parnell.
My name is Bailey Parnell, and I'm the founder and CEO of Skills Camp, my international soft skills training company. There are a ton of other learning opportunities that you can engage with to learn any skill, and especially soft skills and career skills.
More than 2/3 of adults want non-degree education, and a year ago, only 50% wanted this.
I can put in a skill and I can take my own version of it just in time. I can get that badge on the other end, and I can take what I've learned and ideally put it into practice in my life.
While a degree can increase your job opportunities, just having a degree in a field that doesn't serve you isn't helpful. It's about leveraging what relevant skills you have. This study concludes that employers rank traditional education as on par with other credentials such as knowledge-based, technical skills, and soft skills. So if a degree isn't a must, how do we build new skills?
If you wanted to start your journey learning any skill, the first thing is to just start. That's number one, because most people get ahead of themselves in their head, and then they never even open the book, open the link, start the journey at all. The second thing you need to do is work on your growth mindset and your confidence. Because what we see, especially with adult learners, is that they find that their skills are already set, or that they've already learned all that they need to learn, or that they are already the person that they're going to be for the rest of their life. I think the most important thing would be once you cultivate the growth mindset, everything can become a learning opportunity.
Learning new skills gives us purpose and also makes us desirable to hiring managers. 66% of employees rank the joy of learning new things and developing new skills as the top upskilling motivator. 74% of employees think their managers need reskilling and upskilling training. So regardless of position, title, or rank, we could all use some developing of skills. According to this HBR article, there's 5 main steps to learning a new skill. Step 1, decide whether it's needed. Step 2, figure out how you learn. Step 3, find someone who can help you. Step 4, start small. And step 5, teach it. So school didn't really teach me all of the skills required to run a rapidly scaling business with people who look to you for direction, nor how to manage several projects all at once. It can feel a little overwhelming. So project management is definitely a skill that I need to run a media production company. To determine how I was going to learn it, I looked into several options available online that were accessible and had some guidance. I looked through a couple of project management courses on Coursera and ultimately landed on this Google Career Certificate, a program taught and developed by Google employees that provides professional training in project management. And you need no relevant experience to start. So my goal was to complete 10 hours of the coursework in a day. And let me tell you, that was a tall order because I decided to start on a Monday, which is a day that I also have like 5 hours of meetings that I couldn't skip. So I had to complete as much as I could that day, and I eventually realized that this may not be the best approach and needed some help. I just tried to do 10 hours of work in 3 hours.
But you don't need to rush. It is better to just go slowly and succeed at your own pace than just burning out and not finishing.
So that brings us to step 4. Break it down into manageable chunks, which I did not do. I learned that one the hard way. These lessons in the course helped me keep my learning semi-structured. Now, I was almost through my course. I decided on what skill I wanted to build, determined how I wanted to learn it, found someone to help me, and broke it down into manageable chunks. All that was left to test my knowledge was to explain it to somebody else. Now, since I don't have classmates, I just forced Taha to listen to me while I explained Agile Project Management to him. Agile Project Management. I think he enjoyed it. And with that, I had completed my course. She is a project manager now. I earned this certificate that I can't hold up because it's digital. I do feel like I am better equipped to manage these projects, and I hope that people will recognize that. But there is this small part of me that just can't stop thinking that this doesn't feel as impressive to somebody besides me. But I did do the work, even if I did do the work in front of a computer in the comfort of my own room. So how do you beat imposter syndrome?
if you're feeling imposter syndrome as it relates to getting education that would be, say, non-traditional, try to remember that the work does still speak for itself. For me, I get confidence through competence. So when I know that I know a lot about something and I've looked up what's happening in the news and I feel really willing to talk about it with someone, that's when I feel my most confident. Hiring managers ask for the degree because it's a very quick way for them to check off that you were able to do certain hard skills, certain soft skills. You clearly have some diligence. You're able to go through the rigor of the full program. You were able to succeed throughout hardship and throughout a long period of time. So it's easy for them to check that off. But now 96% of hiring managers are going to Google search you before they actually hire you. So what are they finding? Are they finding like a really clean, nicely put together, detailed LinkedIn profile that explains the exact kind of work that you've done?
So I guess there's a couple of things that I've taken away from this whole experience here. One, it's never too late to switch careers, and there's so many options out there for learning that aren't formal education. Now, while formal education can provide some benefits that other types of education can't, I think that the most important thing to remember when you're in the workplace is to just be kind to yourself. I would say that nobody really cares what kind of piece of paper you have. It's really about the skills and the teamwork that you bring to the table. So I was inspired to learn about other people who have taken Google career certificates and made a career change. For example, there was Melinda, who was a hairdresser and cosmetology teacher who switched careers to doing IT support after taking Google's IT support certificate. So in the end, you don't need to go back to school or get a degree to learn a new skill. Learning can be a lifelong journey, and there's so many ways to do it, whether it's online or in person. It's really about figuring out what skills you need or what you need to specialize in, setting goals, figuring out how you want to learn it, finding a mentor, setting the time aside to practice it, finding a learning method that works for you, and not giving up.
You want to switch industries, but you have no experience. You might have more experience than you realize. Hi, I'm Taha from Answer in Progress, where we make videos taking people on a journey from question to answer. In this video, we talk to a career expert so we can figure out how we can think about our skills when we move to a new industry. A recent poll showed that half of American employees considered making a career change, and 44% are already planning to make the switch. So you're not alone if you're having a bit of a career crisis. But how do you join an industry that you have no experience in? To answer this question, I spoke to Esila Garcia, a Google recruiter with a lot of experience on this topic.
Hi, my name is Esila Garcia, and I am a recruiter here at Google. I help to screen, interview, and identify candidates and support them through the interview process.
A common concern when changing careers is that if we don't have any formal experience, we're starting from square one. Fortunately, this isn't necessarily true.
My typical advice for anyone who is making a career pivot or transition is I like to consider sort of three main pillars. First and foremost, I always encourage folks to consider their trajectory of what it is that they're trying to anchor toward. So what is it that in your desired industry or role are required skills that are needed to be successful? Some of these are going to be hard skills, maybe certification, potentially years of experience. Once you get an understanding of what is desired in this space, then you want to take an assessment of what it is that you're bringing to the table. Oftentimes, what I'm encouraging my hiring managers to look for are things called core competencies. Things like critical thinking, problem solving, everything from like budgeting to even like sales, for example. I'm someone who started in like retail sales, for example. I was on the sales floor talking to people, helping them with makeup. And years later, those same skills of uncovering needs and desires of someone's, skincare or makeup routine landed to being able to uncover what it is that folks want to do in their careers and what they're good at. Ideally, you also want to get creative when you're thinking about your own experiences. So you may not only think of your typical 9-to-5 when you're factoring in your own experiences and skills. Maybe an ad hoc project, a side hustle, or something else might feed into the desired role or industry that you're trying to anchor towards.
There are many skills that are transferable and can be demonstrated in other industries. Some of the top skills that employers look for include being able to support and lead a team, being able to make decisions and solve problems, and being able to plan and organize work. These are skills that can be demonstrated in all industries and outside of work. Career capital is a conceptual framework that we can use to understand the real value of being able to build a career. Knowing your why is examining the internal and external factors that are driving your career and need for change. Knowing why you want to change is an important part of finding the right fit for you in the future. Considering your why helps you gain clarity on not only why you are motivated and interested in your work, but also helps you gain an understanding of how the industry and labour market are behaving. Knowing who is about knowing who in your network can help you move forward in your career. This could be people from your previous industry, family, friends, and community that could introduce you to opportunities or give you insight and advice from previous experience. Knowing how is the career capital you gain by learning specialist and transferable skills that you can present to new employers. So, if we combine Izella's 3 pillars with the career capital framework, we can support our career transition by aiming our anchor and understanding why we're changing jobs. Next, we can assess our current skills and abilities and understand how they transfer over. Finally, we can look at all of our experiences and network to see what and who can support our career transition. Even without a network, it's possible to find a place in a new industry by combining what you can offer with what the industry is looking for. Okay, so with all that knowledge, I've decided to make a job application for a fictional person named Andy. This is Andy the accountant. He loves watching films and he wants to move into the film industry. He dreams of becoming the next big film director. However, he's been working in accounting for the last 20 years. Initially, it seems like accounting and the film industry have nothing in common. So how does Andy make the jump from two things that seem vastly opposite? If we follow the career capital framework, Andy might actually have a lot more experience than he thinks. So let's take this step by step. Step 1 is knowing your why, examining the internal and external factors driving your career change. Maybe Andy is looking for a new challenge, something more creative and exciting than his current role. Maybe he doesn't enjoy the office culture and is looking for something a little bit more flexible and freelance. Next, he does some research into the film industry. He finds that film production needs big crews of people, different locations, and dynamic timelines. He also notes the lack of traditional work hours, and while potentially he could be working more unsociable hours, he also finds that this aligns more with the reasons of his career change, and a more dynamic work environment is exactly what he's looking for. Identifying these things provides clarity on the types of jobs he would be interested in within the film industry. Step 2 is knowing how. This is all about the skills and experience that you have that will give you a leg up in joining a new industry. Okay, so Andy has a good idea of what the industry is like, and he's also figured out what type of career he wants within that industry. And even though he's never worked in the film industry, it doesn't mean that he doesn't have the skills and experience that are needed for working in the film industry. I mean, he's been dealing with spreadsheets and working with contracts for the best part of 20 years. It's safe to say that he's got an eye for detail, and that's something that's valuable in film production. So, while Andy has a lot of transferable skills, he might not be able to get a job as a big film director immediately, but he can now take the first steps towards his new career ambitions and build the industry-specific skills needed towards his goals. One option for Andy is to find a job within the industry that is similar to the one that he does currently, for example, a production accountant. Another option would be looking for a job that requires a strong familiarity with spreadsheets. Something like a junior position in a production department might be perfect. He might not be familiar with best practices or industry jargon, but his transferable skills will allow him to handle the work well. Both of these options get Andy close to film directors and creatives and allow him to build a familiarity with the industry. The third step is knowing who, otherwise known as social capital. It's very possible that Andy doesn't know anyone in the film industry. However, it's important to not assume that that's the case. His best bet is to make sure that his network, the people who are going to be most supportive of his career change, are aware of his career aspirations and that he's looking for assistance. You never know who someone else might know and who can help.
For Andy, my recommendation is to lean into his analytical acumen, right? I still think that's really important. I think in that sense, it's good to think of Andy's add to that space. But in some ways, I feel kind of jealous of Andy. I think he has that business chops that I feel he might be pretty well off in that space.
Switching industries can be daunting. It seems like you're leaving everything behind to start from scratch, but that's just not true. Your previous skills and experience will be made up of specialist skills from your industry and transferable skills that you'll be able to take to the industry you're planning on joining. By thinking about my experience and Andy's experience not as day-to-day tasks that I do in my job, but as abstract skills that I'm building as I work, has made me realize that not all my skills become obsolete when I decide to make a career change. It's really opened my eyes on how I could be a suitable candidate for a variety of jobs in a variety of careers. And I hope Andy was a good example of how you can manage a career change using the Career Capital framework and Azilla's 3 pillars.
Hey, Grow with Google learners. I'm Isela from Google, and this piece of advice is going to be for those of you who may be looking to make a change in your careers. First and foremost, do your research to understand the specific requirements for the role you'd like to pursue. Talk to folks in your network who have positions similar to the one you want, find out what the position entails, and ask how to stand out as a contender. It may also help to learn whether or not there are any specific requirements that the job advertisements don't mention, such as specific programs, skills, or certifications. With that, it's a great idea to network. For example, if you don't have the desired level of experience, it helps to get buy-in from relevant folks in the industry. From those partnerships, get your contacts to recommend you. Employers are more likely to overlook the gap in your experience if you come with a recommendation from someone they can trust. Additionally, consider if your current organization has opportunities to learn from or work with folks in your desired career path. Oftentimes, organizations will have more faith hiring you in a role you've never had if you've proven yourself in your current role. Use your cover letter to your advantage. A cover letter allows you to share aspects of your personality, experience, and qualifications with the hiring manager that you may not have fully fleshed out in your resume. Use your cover letter to tell your story, and be sure to highlight the reasons why you went and make a career change and focus on how your transferable skills can provide value in the new field. Your cover letter should be specific and persuasive. If you're missing critical skills for a specific position, address this in your cover letter and explain how your past work experience can be useful in the new industry. Emphasize your desire to learn and provide details of the steps you have taken to make your career transition possible, i.e., additional courses, ad hoc projects, side hustles, or volunteer work. And to that point, it can be extremely important to highlight your transferable experiences within your resume as well. Once you've done your research and understand the core skills and competencies needed to be successful in the role, you'll want to highlight that in your own experience. For example, skill sets like project management, sales, budgeting, or cross-functional collaboration and partnership span multiple industries.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's workshop, Develop Your Problem-Solving Skills, hosted by Grow with Google. Grow with Google helps people grow their skills, careers, and businesses by offering free digital skills trainings and tools. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Basim. I'm one of the instructors here at Grow with Google, and I'm so excited that you're here with us today. So today we're going to discuss a simple yet effective process that can be used to solve some of your biggest business challenges. In this workshop, I'm working with Anna, who will answer some of your questions live at the end of the workshop. Okay, so why exactly is problem solving important? So just to put something around it, in 2018, the World Economic Forum defined complex problem solving, critical thinking, and creativity as top skills for 2020. These are critical to growing a successful business, and we'll be talking about them in today's workshop. All right, so for every problem in every industry, in every country, they all follow a similar journey when it comes to getting solved. First, you must define the problem or opportunity, which answers the why question. So why is this important? Second, set objectives and key results. This answers the what needs to happen to reach your goals. So like simply, what does success look like? Next, it's important to create solution options and decide on a strategy which determines the how of the problem. So ask yourself, what could we do to understand the options? Then what should we do to identify the solutions? Lastly, it's time to make a plan and execute it, which solves the who, when, and where part of the problem. This slide outlines a very standard framework, right? Which you may have learned maybe more complex frameworks when trying to solve problems through your life and career. But we find this one to be very effective in its simplicity and its flexibility. We hope you'll find it just as effective as we have as you look to solve complex problems in your life and businesses. So we always want to start with the why. While it may seem straightforward, this is actually typically the number one gap that people, when solving problems, have when basically solve them effectively, as well as the number one cause of failure in actually reaching a solution. This is because people are often not clear on what the problem they're actually trying to solve. Or they could be trying to solve a problem that exists, but that no one cares about because it doesn't affect the company's bottom line. So you must define the exact problem or opportunity before you can decide on a strategy to either solve the problem or execute a plan to fulfill the opportunity. If you don't start with that important part of the process, you may end up developing a solution that doesn't really solve a relevant problem. So as Albert Einstein once said, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about the solution. Because truly understanding why the problem exists and what the actual issue is will help you to develop the best possible solution. So when determining the problem that needs solving, creating a problem statement can help you to clearly define the problem that needs solving. A good problem statement has a few key elements. First, it's quantifiable, which means it can be defined by specific data and information. Second, it's important to the customers and your company. And third, it's not framed in terms of a solution. I find this is actually the biggest one. Remember, you want to first clearly define the problem so you can later determine the solution. All right, so now we're going to dive a little deeper into these three components of your problem statement. So as part of the first component of your problem statement, you want to basically quantify the problem as much as possible while also being as specific as you can. So looking at the statement here on the slide, it says, our online purchasing process has too many steps. That's not really specific though, right? So how can we make this more quantifiable and specific so that we can determine if a true problem exists? So we could quantify that by saying instead, our online purchasing process has too many steps. It takes 14 clicks to purchase a product versus 4 for our main competitor. This gives it a better sense of scale when it comes to the problem. It also is something that we can likely get people to care about, simply by avoiding generalities like we had in that very first statement. The second thing is that your problem needs to be important for your company and or your customers. A great way to figure out whether your problem is important or not is simply to ask yourself after coming with the problem, so what? So let's consider the statement on the left-hand side of the slide, which states our online purchasing process has too many steps. It takes 14 clicks to purchase a product versus 4 for our main competitor. This statement is quantifiable and it's very specific, but it lacks the so what factor. So let's counter that statement with, someone says, what if you said in response to that statement, but we only do 5% of our business through our website, right? So what about the other 95% of our business that isn't through our website, right? So knowing that, this objective then becomes less important. So think about how we can add a so what to this statement. Looking at an example here on the right, it could be 50% of our sales are through our website, and we have about 60% abandonment rate in the purchase process, resulting in us losing up to 30% of our total revenue opportunity. That puts this problem in perspective because we now understand how it affects the company's profits. And I'm pretty sure that if you were to put this in front of your boss in that context, they would understand the importance of solving this problem. The third key element of a good problem statement is that it's not framed in a solution, right? It's not framed around a solution. And this, like, I cannot emphasize the importance of this enough. You'll oftentimes see a problem statement that either you or a colleague thinks is a problem, but it's really their way of actually expressing their solution. So you can see here a couple examples on the slide. The first one states that the problem here is that we haven't implemented that new customer relationship management system that I recommended, right? That sounds like a problem, but it's actually a solution. So looking at the other example, it states that the problem is that we need to hire a web designer for our team. Again, it sounds like a problem, but it's actually a solution to a problem that really hasn't been identified here. So let's take that second problem there. Let's think about that for a moment. If the problem statement included a need to improve the website, right? So we leave it at that, a need to improve the website. There could be a dozen different ways to solve that problem, right? Yeah, so maybe we do need to hire another web designer team. That could be a solution, but maybe a better solution would be to hire an external vendor as opposed to a new team member, right? So as you can see, the problem with framing a problem around a solution is that you miss opportunities to find better solutions for that actual problem. All right, so now it's time for you to try yourself. Think of a project that you're currently working on, and how could you describe the problem statement? What is it, that specific issue that you're actually targeting? Remember, make sure that it's quantifiable, and it's also important for your customers as well as your company, and that it isn't framed in the terms of a solution, right? So take a few moments, write down your thoughts on a pen, with a pen and paper, or you can also do it in a Google Doc. All right, so once we've established our problem statement, we want to set objectives and key results for solving it. This is the what part of our problem solving process. A great way to think about this part of the program is asking yourself, what does success look like here? You might have heard about objectives and key results because it's actually a core of how Google develops strategy. It sounds simple, but it's actually very effective while also being very difficult to get right. But once you get the hang of it, it will be transformational for you, your career, and your business. All right, remember, so when defining your objectives and key results, it's really like asking yourself, what does success look like here? All right, so there's a few differences between the objectives you'll set and the key results that are related to it. The objective, of course, is what you want to achieve, while the key results are how you know you've actually achieved it. So, for example, your objective might be to launch a beautiful and intuitive new website in time for the holiday peak sales period. But that seems very vague, right? It's really more of an aspirational vision of where you want to be, but like, how will you know you've actually hit that objective? This is where those key results come into play. You should establish specific and quantifiable results like 40% of users return to the website within 2 weeks, or maybe user bounce rate from the website is less than 20%, and the website loads in under 3 seconds. If these three things in the key results are all the things you can measure, then they can prove that you've actually met your objective. If we know that these key elements will be part of creating an intuitive website, then we can focus on those key results to actually achieve our objective. So the objective will focus on what you want when solving a problem, not how to measure it. This might seem less quantifiable in nature, but that is why you'll establish those key results to measure how you're actually meeting that objective. So, looking here, for example, make our website an intuitive and rewarding experience for people to visit, or expand our customer base beyond the US, increasing revenue and reduce our dependence on a single market, or reduce quality variations in our product to ensure a consistent experience for our customer. Those all sound like things that you would want to do for your business, and that are potentially solving a problem that you've defined in your problem statement. But the general, right? So then you get into those key results. So as I mentioned, your key results are how you measure whether or not you've met your objective. It's important to keep these points in mind. Right? Number one, the key results needs to be measurable. For example, a better experience could be measured by the number of repeat visitors. An increase in quality could be measured by the percentage of customers that actually return. It should be something where you can come back after a specified time and then look at it, maybe like a month or 3 months, whatever you say, and say, yeah, I did that, right? So then you actually can see it and that you've reached that measurement. So second, achieving your key results means you've met your objective, right? So be sure that these actual results tie back to the objective that you've outlined. If they don't, then you can't establish whether you met those objectives. Third, introduce constraints to ensure balance and quality. So for example, you don't want to focus just on volume when you also need to uphold the quality of a product. So instead of saying, we want to make 500 new units, you should instead say, we want to make 500 new units with a less than 1% defect rate. That would then balance the speed of production with the drive to reach that new volume goal while also maintaining a quality that you know is critical to your business and your customers. Another example includes the number of features we want to include with a product, versus the cost of that product. This is important because you don't want to have one element of that product that will become so important that it actually negatively impacts the other important elements. All right, so now it's your turn. Think of the project you're currently working on. What is the objective, right? So what do you actually want to achieve? And what are some of the key results that would indicate the achievement of that objective? Take a few minutes to keep writing your thoughts on paper, or continue in your Google Doc. Okay, so now that we understand what our problem is and what we want to achieve and how we'll measure that success, the next step is to create solution options. And this is simply the how phase. Notice how we spent quite a bit of time focusing on the why and the what before we get into the how. This is intentional, so we are clear on how to best move forward. Creating solution option answers the question, what could we do to meet our objective? So the key to succeeding in the how mode is to use both expansive and reductive thinking. So expansive thinking answers the what could we do thinking, right? And then we switch to the reductive thinking that answers the what should we do question. This takes a large number of potential ideas and then whittles them down to a smaller subset of ideas that are best for solving our problem. There's a quote from a well-known American chemist, Linus Pauling, who has won both Nobel Prizes for chemistry and peace, that came out of a question from one of his graduate students. And the student asked, Professor Pauling, how do you come up with so many great ideas? To which he replied, it's easy. The best way to get good ideas is to get lots of ideas and then throw away the bad ones. This is an excellent example of how one of the world's greatest scientific minds thought about expansive and reductive thinking. So when we think about expansive thinking, brainstorming is one of the most effective ways of generating expansive thinking. The problem is that people generally get brainstorming wrong. You may have been to a brainstorming session yourself, maybe at school or work. Typically, everyone will come into a session for an hour to discuss all kinds of incredible blue sky thinking ideas, only to end the session with no specific plan or action steps. This is an all too common thing, but there are 3 essential action steps that you can take to make those sessions more effective. First, be sure to delegate someone to take the lead. Now, this person will serve to keep the group on track, setting parameters for the group and to hold people accountable in a kind of healthy way for basically not following the rules set by the group. Second, be sure that you are clearly in either the expansive or reductive mode. Try not to mix the two during your brainstorming sessions. For example, when you're brainstorming ideas in the group, someone may be quick to say, that's not going to work. But this is a clear example of one person who's operating in reductive mode when the rest of the group is still currently in expansive mode. And on the other side, someone may say, hey, I've got a great idea when the rest of the group is currently in reductive mode. And this is an example of them slipping back into expansive mode. These kinds of deviations disrupt the flow of the session and could cause some chaos, right? So it should be a responsibility of that facilitator to be sure that it is clear when the group is either in expansive or reductive mode. But of course, the decision to move from one to the other should all be made by the entire group. Third, leave time at the end for reductive thinking to plan to move forward. This is probably one of the most common failures of brainstorming. The group waits until the very few minutes left on the clock to discuss the plan to move forward. It's that facilitator's job to make it really clear how much time will be allocated for each area, right? To focus with enough time set aside to plan the next steps before that group leaves the room. So, all right, so once you've brainstormed potential solutions, you can better structure them by using what's called a solution tree. The solution tree is a classic consulting tool that starts with an objective you've outlined in step 2, right? You then build your solution tree on a sheet of paper, whiteboard, Google Slides, whatever works best for you and your team. Once you've added the objective to the left side of your solution tree, so you can see in our example here, it is to increase product revenue, right? And then you further branch out into potential solutions that you've identified during your brainstorming session. These should ideally be what consultants called MISI, right, which stands for mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. So the mutually exclusive part means that none of the ideas should overlap. They should all be separate ideas with their own branches. The collectively exhaustive part of the acronym refers to these branches, right, that encompassing all the space of ideas of the potential solutions. So your solution tree may appear to be growing as you become more expansive in your thinking, but you can, of course, remove branches later in the reductive phase of brainstorming. All right, so let's look at our example. So if the objective is to increase product revenue, the next set of branches will include potential solutions. So and we can see our solutions, we've included sell more of the same products and sell new products as our potential solutions. We know that these two ideas are mutually exclusive because they don't overlap. As we look to branch out our solutions further, let's first consider selling more of the same products. We may think about attracting new customers in Europe or Asia, or merely selling more of our existing, in our existing customer base. When it comes to selling new products, a few options could include expanding into the mobile space or expanding into cloud services. Each of these are mutually exclusive and they don't overlap. All right, so now that you have a full map in front of you that is both mutually exclusive, no two ideas overlap, and collectively exhaustive, we've covered every single part of the solutions. We can move on to the next step. And that next step is to focus on the best solutions. This is where we shift into our reductive thinking. After all, we won't reach our goal quickly and efficiently if we actually try to implement all those ideas, right? So let's start by chopping off some of the branches of our solution tree. Now you're thinking like, but how do I know which are the best solutions and which ones do we chop off? And so the best way to prioritize our solutions where a large number of options are available is to build what is called a prioritization matrix. So to do that, you would start by taking a piece of paper or a whiteboard and you draw a vertical line connected to a horizontal line. At the top of the vertical line, write impact. And at the end of that horizontal line, write effort. Then you add lines perpendicular to your two original lines, dividing your matrix into 4 quadrants. On the impact line, the top box should be labeled high impact. On the bottom box labeled low impact. On the effort line, the left box should be labeled low effort, and the right box should be labeled high effort. Then you take all of your ideas from your solution tree and map them into your prioritization matrix. Based on the degree of impact you expect the idea to have and the amount of effort you expect it takes to implement that idea. All right, so let's just take a look at the first box. In the top left corner of our matrix, the low effort, high impact square. Any ideas you put in this quadrant of your matrix will be considered what we call a quick win. You want to focus on it early on in the process because it will have the highest impact on your problem with the lowest effort. This will also help you to build stakeholder confidence because it will most likely be an early success. And of course, stakeholders will love to see that. Stakeholders may include your management team, your boss. It could also be your customers, right? And this will include basically anyone who is highly invested in the problem and the solution. All right, so looking at the next quadrant we will look at is the high effort, low impact solution. These include solutions that will be a lot of work, but likely won't result in a lot of change. These are ideas we can remove altogether. If they won't impact your objectives and results, but they will use up a lot of our resources, they really aren't worth implementing. Now, this does not mean that this idea was bad, right? It's just objectively the most logical for us to eliminate when we're faced with so many good ideas. All right, so now let's look at the high impact, high effort solutions. These will be the solutions we spend the majority of our time working on. You know it will take time, but you also know it will deliver against your problem. On the bottom left, we have the low impact, low effort solutions. Because these solutions don't take a lot of work, but will have the lowest impact, you will simply just work on these when we have the time. All right, so the recap, focus on high impact, low effort. You want to focus on those first to secure those quick wins. Then we move our main focus of your project work to the high impact, high effort solutions and work on those low impact, low effort activities when you have time or natural breaks in your high impact your high effort activities. And don't forget, you want to discard those ideas that fall in the low impact, low effort category. Now it's time to make a plan, and you want to execute that plan. While it may seem like we spent a lot of time completing the first 4 steps, you'll likely spend the majority of your time in your project basically fulfilling this final step. The reason why we focus on those first 4 steps before moving to planning and execution is because we want to be sure we aren't a solution looking for a problem, and instead we focus on first identifying the true problem to find the solution. It's also critical to be sure someone actually cares about the problem before finding a solution for it. All right, so the 3 key elements to turn a strategy into a reality include making a plan with clear accountability, making time to focus on it, and tracking progress while adjusting the plan as needed. All right, so let's get into more details about these different points. All right, so a simple way to make a plan and track its execution is to build a who does what by when matrix. You can set this up in a spreadsheet format using Google Sheets. In the first column, you include the action or work package that needs to take place as part of your solution. Then under each work package, include the individual steps you need to complete to fulfill that action. For example, as part of my solution, let's say I've identified that I need to expand to a new location. To do that, I know the specific actions I need to take include designing the process, building the prototype, identifying the pilot group, and launching and analyzing the results of the pilot. It's likely that you won't be completing each and every one of these actions, right? So the next column, you want to identify the owner of that task. So basically, who will complete this action? Let's say your colleague Rachel will be designing the process for expansion. Next, you want to add a column with the due date for that specific action. This will help your team the same track. You can ask Rachel when she believes she can complete this action. And then, of course, evaluate if this is in line with the rest of the project and the team. And then the next column include the status of that action. You can include categories like on track, at risk, and complete. And then last, a column with comments that can be helpful to leave notes for the entire team, especially when there's a status like at risk, and an explanation, of course, is needed. For example, let's say Neil is working on one of the tasks, but he's out sick for this week. Someone else on the team can see that note and pick up where Neil left off to get that project back on track. So now, if you've ever done project management in the past, you may have created something similar to this tracker, right? There are much more complicated project management trackers and tools that you can use, of course, but it's important to keep it simple so the entire team feels comfortable updating the tracker with their status updates. But for example, if you're building a nuclear power plant with hundreds of people, it would, of course, be much more appropriate to have a way more complicated matrix. But if you're making simple updates to your website with a small team, something like this should work just fine. The second element you want to focus on to turn your strategy into reality is making time to focus on it. This may be more complicated than you think, because we're all busy. There's always a whirlwind of things to get done during the workday, and a new project just may not be something you've made extra time for. So amongst the phone calls, emails, and client needs, it's your job to actually carve out time to focus on this problem. Because you've actually defined it, it may be something defined as critical to your business. Now, of course, depending on the urgency, it may make sense to carve out as much as 20 to 30% of your time to focus on this project. The final piece is to track the progress and adjust the plan accordingly. If all plans went exactly accordingly, the job project manager simply wouldn't exist. The reality is that we live in an ever-changing world and things happen. So you want to track your progress using the tracker, just like we reviewed, and then hold regular meetings with the team to check, basically check in and make sure progress is moving well in the plan. even if it's just you, right? If you're the only person that's doing a project, be sure to check in with yourself on your progress and the status of the actions needed to complete it. You will do things like ask yourself, where am I against all of the key results that need to happen for me to meet my objective? Am I on track? Do I need to adjust the plan to account for delays, mistakes, or changes? If something is actually at risk, what do I need to do to remove that risk and make sure I continue on the path to making progress? And of course, as always, try to keep things simple, right? Overly complex plans should be avoided unless it's absolutely necessary to complete that project. If you only remember one thing from today, think of the why, what, and how of problem solving. Remember, first define the problem or opportunity, which answers the why question. Second, set objectives and key results. This answers the question of what needs to happen to reach your goals. Next, it's important to create solution options and decide on a strategy which defines the how of the problem. And last, it's time to make a plan and execute it, which solves the who, when, and where part of the problem. Now, the biggest problem we see for businesses is that they jump into the how phase too quickly. Be sure to spend the necessary time to define your problem long before you try to solve it. All right, if you'd like to learn more skills you can apply to your business, career, or job search, Google has training resources that you can access from anywhere. There are many different learning paths and options, so we'll talk about these tools and determine which ones make the most sense for you right now. So you can grow your digital skills no matter where you're located. You can prepare for the career you want through our online workshops. You can learn skills that can help you stay connected and productive. If you're curious about our workshops, you can take virtually from home. Visit g.co/growinair for our current virtual digital skills workshops and their descriptions. If you want to quickly sharpen your skills, check out Primer's lessons on everything from marketing to productivity tools. Primer is a free app that you can download on your phone. If you have an Android device, you can download it from the Play Store. If you have an Apple device, you can, of course, download it from the Apple App Store. Now, Primer offers free 5-minute lessons focused on all kinds of things, from digital skills to include marketing, businesses, building websites, increasing productivity, and more. Definitely check it out. For those of you who haven't heard, Applied Digital Skills free training curriculum helps you with more skills you might want to learn, from data analysis, big word for me, to research and communication, to resume writing. There are lots of lessons for everyone from adult learners to middle school to high school students. And of course, don't forget, you can also find all of our additional resources available by visiting google.com/grow. This wraps up the presentation portion of today's workshop. Now give us a few moments to pass it off to Anna, who will answer some of the questions you've submitted.
Thanks, Vaseem. Hey, everyone, I'm Anna. I'm excited to answer a few of the questions you've asked throughout the session. Okay, our first question comes from Oliver. Oliver asks, what if you can't decide on the best solution because you have a few really good ones? Now, it can be both a good and bad thing when you have too many good solutions for a problem. So start by looking at some of the logistical details related to these ideas. What resources are required for each solution? How much will it cost for you to implement? How much time will each one take? Once you dive into those details, you'll likely get a better idea of which solutions might make more sense to implement versus others, which can really help you to narrow it down. Okay, my next question comes from Hugo. Hugo asks, what do you do when you struggle to keep your team on task during a brainstorming session? Hugo, this is a very common problem. It really helps to have someone moderating, as we mentioned in today's session. You should also empower your moderator to keep time and manage the specific topics during that time. So for instance, if anyone gets off track, the moderator can politely correct them by letting them know what topic they need to be speaking about at that moment, when they'll be switching topics so that they know exactly when they can start talking about that particular topic. Moderation is key to successful brainstorming. Okay, my next question comes from Angela. Angela asks, what should I do when my coworkers are clearly coming up with solutions as opposed to problems? We gave a couple examples in today's session, but it's really easy for us to mistakenly come up with solutions as opposed to problems when we're problem solving. So I'd encourage you to walk your coworkers through this process that we talked about today when trying to challenge their thinking. So for example, you can ask them, what problem are we trying to solve by doing X, Y, and Z thing that they mentioned as a problem, but actually it was a solution. Then you can suggest that it would be best to walk through all possible solutions before committing to that one. After all, if the solution they've identified is truly the right one for this particular problem, then this process will just confirm that. Okay, our next question comes from Gabriel. How much time should we allocate to the expansive versus reductive phases when brainstorming? This totally depends on your group. You definitely want to spend more time on the expansive to make sure that you fully exhaust all of your big ideas. Remember, this doesn't have to be one and done. If you planned on allocating, say, an hour on expansive thinking and 30 minutes on reductive thinking, and you're well past the hour and still coming up with great ideas, you may decide to push the session into overtime if schedules allow. Or maybe you decide you want to have one session just for expansive thinking and then a later session for reductive thinking to give people a time to kind of cleanse their mental palate, right? Okay, my next question comes from Kim. What if the solution we identified during the brainstorming session actually doesn't work in practice? This happens more than you would think. Just because we have a great brainstorming session and we think we have the best solution doesn't guarantee that it's always going to work. So this is a great example of why it's important to generate so many ideas during the brainstorming phase. If you implement what you thought was the best solution, but it doesn't quite work out that way, then you can still go back to all of those great ideas that you generated during the expansive stage. But now you've collected even more data on how things work in practice. So when you go to the reductive phase again, you can apply those potential concerns. So you're able to do reductive thinking in a much more efficient way the second time around. Okay, my next question comes from Emily. Emily asks, is there a template we can use for project management? Absolutely. We currently have 4 project management templates available for you in Google Docs. There are a few ways to access them, but I find the best way is to start in your Google Drive. So from Google Drive, click on the big New button in the upper left corner. Then hover your mouse over the arrow to the right of Google Sheets, which will bring up a sub-menu where you'll click From a Template. This will open the template gallery for Sheets, and then you can scroll down to the section called Project Management to see all the available templates. All right, Marcos, as our last question here, but certainly not least, can I apply this to my personal life? That's a great question. And the answer is absolutely. This process for solving problems can be applied to any type of challenge you might face. Let's say you're a student looking for ways to fund college, for example. Expansive thinking through brainstorming and then reductive thinking to narrow down those options will likely give you ideas for making money to save for college that you may have never thought of otherwise. And this can be applied to so many different things that you might be working on in your personal life. All right, that wraps up our Q&A for today. Thank you so much for joining us for Develop Your Problem-Solving Skills. Hopefully everyone learned something new. But thank you again for joining Growth Google today. We'll see you next time.